Let's talk about one particular theme today, and it's sort of more broad than you would think by name, but let's talk for a moment about prosperity or abundant consciousness. And then I'm going to share with you some prayers, those of you who have asked, some decrees that I've written in the past, and so I'm going to share those with you guys as a closing. But it's so hard for the human mind to really comprehend what God is. However, if we live in fear and judgment, we constrict our consciousness, and we think God punishes us. There used to be a really intense belief of curses from God. If something went wrong in your life, there were people, your friends, your family members would say, better not stand too close to them, they're cursed. And they would think God, as though God's sitting somewhere going, you're cursed, you're cursed, you're cursed, and you too. You're not cursed. Psych, you're cursed, This isn't at all what God is about. How could God curse if it's only love? Just the presence of love. What happens is we develop these things. We made these things up. And it wasn't so bad because we partly did it to keep ourselves from getting too nuts on earth, from going too far in our hurtful behavior. So creating karma and such wasn't really necessarily a bad idea because it kind of kept us in check. But we went too far with curses and taking on guilts and shames that aren't there. And it only needs to be taken as long as you still believe that you're a flawed person. So forgiveness makes the way. When we say, there's people out there that say, here's how you create abundance. Sit, concentrate that you are God, and concentrate on what you want and you'll manifest it. And we've talked about this before, so I won't go into that too far, but it's not true, capital T. It's only in the make-believe world that it's remotely true that if you close your eyes and think hard about something enough, you might get it. And then you're going to praise it. We're back to doors and, the doors instead of what's in the room, praising the doors. I learned this new technique on how to manifest. I mean, how could that go wrong? You're going to have lots of people following you. If you develop a technique that gets people what they want. But the way of God is to say, what I really like you to do is get your ego out of the way and become God. Don't proclaim yourself to be God while your ego is still running the ship or the show. It doesn't make sense. Just because you can manifest a car or a job or money or whatever it is, that's just magic. It's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It's just stuff of this world. So we need abundant consciousness, not prosperity techniques per se, but a consciousness. What consciousness? Seek first the kingdom. Seek first the consciousness of God. And all the rest will come. It's hard. We actually think that God is so far away that we have to work hard to get it. So then we take God and splinter it into several little definitions. One of them being prosperity. One of them being healing, and so on. We splinter them all off, and then we work hard to try to get that one thing. But you're only talking about the splinter again. Better than nothing. But God's saying, if you would just focus on being one with me, you would have all the various things you're making into religions for yourselves. Concentrate on being the love of God. And then the rest comes. This is not inconsistent with also saying, practice forgiveness, and you'll get the things you're looking for in your life. Sounds like a different topic. It isn't. Because learning to become the consciousness of God means you also become a more forgiving person. So some people take it literally and they think I'm saying you have to forgive somebody so that you're allowed to, then you've earned a raise at work. It's not necessarily literally like that, but it is kind of like that. Because every judgment, because God is not judgmental, every judgment I have is ungodly or it is not like God. So how can I create a life of love, peace, joy, and abundance if I'm thinking unlike God? I need to restore, my consciousness. I need to get back to thinking like, feeling like, being like God. And one of those things would be to not be judgmental. When I judge, I constrict my consciousness. Therefore, it can't create love, peace, joy, and abundance. Abundance is just one aspect, and that's I'm focusing on today. But they're all the same. Solomon, wisest and richest man in history. Solomon was told by God, in the story, God saying, Solomon, I'm very impressed with how dedicated you are. Congratulations. And then, is there anything I can give you? Now, it's not like God's literally visiting saying, listen, hey, how you doing, man? Hey, high five or whatever. It's not literal, but the consciousness of God is communing with the consciousness of Solomon, saying, you have achieved a level of integrity that allows you to call upon more in your life. That's you and I, potentially. So what would you like? Now, imagine the average human being, not religious and not spiritual. If they could just somehow figure out you could have anything you want, they're going to go, because they're material oriented, they're going to go for material things, right? I mean, that's the consciousness. They're going to want something. I want that raise. It's like how many Twilight Zones did something like that, which is a good way to find where you'd end up, in the Twilight Zone, if you live like that. There's movies like it. There's the Bruce Almighty kinds of movies where somebody's granted this ability and they just have to walk through their selfishness. Groundhog Day. The first time, several, and you don't even know how many times. You just have an idea that, how many times did he loop through? Well, I remember it was 4 or 5. No. You saw 4 or 5 loops of him going through. Keep in mind, he had to have gone through that time loop enough times to have become a physician, because he ends up as a doctor, a musician, because he ends up being a master at music, jazz pianist and all. Think about how many times he had to go through that loop to have attained all that. That's very discouraging. To think we can go through the same loops. You do. It's called reincarnation. Except we sometimes reincarnate our problems over and over in one lifetime. There's a way to break this. Seek what's in the room of God. Seek what's in there, not the doors, not the fixtures on the doors, but what's in there. And then act like it. Act like what that thing would do. What would God do in this moment? If you think God is judgmental, you might accidentally start acting judgmental, but that's not God. What kind of God would you like? See, the truth is we actually already have these beliefs. We already have it set in our mind. When you make a little mistake in your life, and then you think something's coming back on you, or it does come back and somebody says, oh, that was karma, that's all already determined in our mind. We already think that that's the kind of thing we deserve to happen. We've already played judge and jury. That's got to stop. So instead we learn to say, God, I really don't know what to do with this relationship. Show me the relationship as you would see it. And instead of, uh-oh. I remember this one episode is kind of weird. God only knows where these things come to me from. But this one obviously from a strange dimension. But I remember an episode of I Love Lucy. Michael's going to share an I Love Lucy story, and it's going to somehow add to the spirituality of our growth today and whatever. Yes. One time, she's, as usual, done something, and she was lying, again, as usual. Ricky, no, Lucy, you got a lot of splaining to do, and she's like, no, really. And then she says to him, I swear, God strike me dead. And then she actually goes, like she's expecting it to happen, So I thought it was kind of funny. And this is how we live, although not as physically reactive overtly. There's a part of us, as soon as we even just a wisp of misthought comes through, there's a part of us, it's actually called the ego, that says, now, you wait for that to come around. The ego is going to ask you to sign contracts to help alleviate that karma from coming around, as though it's doing you a favor. But it's the guy that's telling you karma's coming, then tells you to sign a contract to get out of the karma. And the contract it gets you to sign is worse than the original problem. It doesn't tell you there's only one way out. Love and forgiveness. Who do I have to forgive then? Well, you could start maybe with yourself. What is it that you thought, went on here? So on the context of prosperity and abundance, or health, healing, whatever is on the mind. How's it going, guys? Well, I'm doing well, except, there's some challenges with prosperity. We are told you can have anything if you forgive, because forgiveness is the only thing that blocks anything, because everything is consciousness. So Solomon says, I can have anything, you can have anything. I think I'll go with wisdom. See, that's not a typical human being. I think I'll go with wisdom. Whoa, God says. That, wow. What made you think of wisdom? And Solomon goes, because Solomon is a together kind of guy. He's dedicated, right? And he says, because I have a feeling that if you have wisdom, you have everything. You would know investments. You would know how to, conduct yourself. You would know everything. You'd have everything. And that was right. And God says, because you chose wisdom, you will now have anything and everything a person could ever want. So he became the most powerful and the wealthiest person in history. Okay? Even his treasure eventually is passed on to Alexander the Great, who was, I think, another good example of this kind of consciousness. But Solomon, God first. That's the point. Solomon went for wisdom, guys. Don't get caught up in the word. Solomon went for wisdom, which is synonymous with God. Do you understand that? He says, I want a consciousness of God when he said wisdom. And when you have the consciousness of God, you'll have anything and everything. Don't settle. Don't say, if only I got that 25-cent raise. Well, you can say it. Just acknowledge that that's your human self. Isn't this funny? I'm sitting here praying, and I'm asking for a 25-cent raise. And I'm not going to shame myself, because that would be unforgiving. It's okay. I'm just going to sit and kind of laugh at it. I am entitled to all, and I'm asking for 25 cents. Kind of laugh at yourself. You can laugh and go, I still want the 25 cents. But laugh and understand. And then just live dangerously and say, yes, I'm putting out for 25 cents, but I'm open for more. I am open to experience the prosperity of God. And if you're willing to go to the prosperity or the healing of God or the inner peace of God and so on, you're going to find that downloading. The problem is your eyes sometimes could say, well, I only got 15 cents. I asked for 25 and I even asked for more. I only got 15. I guess God this and I guess God that. Don't bring God into it. God is flowing and flowing and flowing as healing, love, peace, joy, abundance, etc. We're the ones who try to catch it in a thimble. We're the ones who say, yeah, fill my Dixie cup, and then wonder why our prosperity is limited. It's unlimited. So say, fill me. Don't hold out a thimble. Fill me. And practice faith and dancing in the knowingness that it's coming, that it's here now. Dance and believe that it's already here. That's what that means. Call, seek, and you shall find. It's impossible to truly put ourselves out there in this open way and for it to be shut. It doesn't make any sense. It works. It's true. The laws of God are true, and therefore I accept them. And we open ourselves up to receive, as it's often termed. I'm going to share with you a couple of quick quotes from here and there, Bible included, but here and there, but I'll be as brief as I can, but pretty quickly. But do understand, the church, back in the ancient times, old days, the church made people think that you're distanced from God. Again, the church is like a door in a building. God is in the building. The church says we're the door and we're shut. So what you can do is worship the building. And there's a box on the outside of the door, worship the door. There's a box on the outside of the door. Be sure to put all your donations in there. Because if you do, we'll be sure to lacquer the door so we look even nicer. But it's all still about the door. So the church historically said, you should be ashamed of yourself for wanting anything. You're lucky to even be able to approach us, the door, representative of God. They weren't representing God. They became doors, and they were shut doors. But the church started making people think they don't deserve healing. You used to have to buy forgiveness, literally. So that means poor people believed, I wish I could change my life, but I can't afford it. And then you come back in another life, and you're still carrying that contract. And then you try to heal, and it's not happening, and you wonder why. So you end up with some prayer group saying, we're sensing that there's this contract. Or some shaman saying, in the second room we found a contract and you need to tear up that contract. People doing all this kind of work for you to help you realize those strange contracts. There's nothing wrong with you. If you're not experiencing love, peace, joy, and abundance, there's just stuff in the way. That's all. It doesn't mean it's not there. There's just stuff in the way. So you work on love and healing and stripping off the stuff that's in the way. Well, I've been doing that, but I don't see it yet. Don't say it's not there. Say I don't see it yet. That's probably true. But it's there. It can't not be there. The presence of God. The light at the end of the tunnel. So, and some people even think, well, I follow a Buddhist path or a mystic path, and so we're not really into prosperity. And so that is a lie. What the hell were you reading? It's a lie. Buddha, Jesus, they were into prosperity. Jesus wore an absolutely highly expensive robe, a seamless garment. He manifested gold coins, silver coins here and there whenever he wanted them. That's pretty dang abundant. He didn't say, oh, geez, I can't afford anything, man. I'm embarrassed to be crucified. I don't have anything nice to wear, I'm sorry, that was really weird. But that didn't happen that way. And that Buddha, Buddha, we always, the statue, and many statues, the heavy Buddha or the emaciated Buddha. When we hear of Buddha fasting and fasting and fasting, and that's not the healthy Buddha, Siddhartha. That's the one he said, I think I took that too far. Why are you worshiping before he woke up? Well, think about this. I want to be like Buddha. I'm going to, just wear this one, wrap around and fast forever. And that's not the guy that woke up. Don't you want to be more like the one that woke up and said, don't do things so seriously. Eat. Have some food. Don't go too far into materialism, and don't deny the material experience. Balance, man, balance. That's Buddha. The Buddhists have typically, the number 8 follows a lot with the Buddhists, but there's 8 attributes for a truly healthy life. 8 attributes. One of them is like gift of speech. One of them is vibrant health. One of them is wealth and prosperity. I don't know a lot of Buddhists that actually speak that. Instead, it's abstinence and abstinence and it's just another misinterpreted or misperceived and misrepresented concept. It's not true. Jesus, Buddha, Moses, prosperity. Patriarchs, matriarchs in history understood it. Now, I'm not saying that means that there's no mystics that have been, and there are a lot of mystics that have went with vows of celibacy and abstinence and prosperity issues, poverty, There were. And they were still mystical. But they were following an extreme called withdrawal and a mystic path. That doesn't mean it's your path. Some of you were those mystics doing it. And we went too far. So balance. Let's come back. We don't have to be materialistic, but you don't have to be completely abstinent. Balance. How can I be in the world and not of the world? And as I get that, prosperity starts to come to me more and more. So we have to recognize this. And so, quickly, 7 sacred laws of abundance. The first one has to be God first. You want to heal, you want to have more prosperity, fine. Make God a priority. So, from the Bible. Thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth the power to get wealth. Now, I didn't hear anything negative in that. Challenge me to open the doors or the windows of heaven and pour out to you a blessing that there shall not be room enough to receive it. It's like, yeah, I want that God. That's pretty cool. Connect with me and I'll pour upon you whatever you're looking for. And you won't even be able to control it all. It'll be too much. Your cup will run over. And which means what? And you'll share it with others, which is one of the Buddhist concepts. Create wealth and healing and healthiness and so forth, Buddha said, so that you can show people what it's like to connect with God, with spirit, with the Buddha consciousness. You see, when you get the consciousness, you become an example of it. That's what he was saying. And if we obey and serve God, we will spend our days in prosperity and our years in pleasure, so your life will be filled with plenty. So again, seek God first. Second principle, second law of prosperity, abundance. Is healing. It's all about healing. Healing the past, healing your misperceptions, not just physical healing. We're talking about abundance, prosperity. You've got to heal your old programs. So the Bible says, every plant my Father in heaven has not planted shall be rooted up. So when you're working on prosperity, your old beliefs have to be taken out. So I'm asking for 25-cent raise. I haven't gotten it yet. Then start working on healing faithlessness, healing fear of lack, heal whatever's coming up. Heal that you think that you need a boss to be in control of your prosperity. A great religious science or science of mind teacher, I loved her way of putting prosperity. God is the source, people are the resource. That's all. God is the source. Everyone else is just a resource. So your boss is just a channel. They're not the original source. The blessing of the Lord makes us rich, but without any sorrow. Which means as I gain prosperity, it doesn't have to come with, something negative, like sacrifice of some kind. Some of us claim to be spiritual, but we still believe that if we get something good, something bad has to happen as well. Like a give and take, and that is not true. Without any sorrow, it said. But you can't create a new life while dragging the past with us. We can't do that. There has to be are you willing to let go and cleanse the old life, the old consciousness? And I'm going to come back to this one. You also have to release past traumas and beliefs, experiences. I find it quite heartbreaking sometimes to hear about some of the poverty that some people were brought up in. It just seems just insane, and it is. But the embarrassment that it comes with, the fear that it comes with, to have kids, going to school and not having lunch money and so forth. I don't mean to just try to, belabor this point, but man, it's harsh stuff. When I first came to Unity of Sedona, there's a story I've shared before, but there's a program in Sedona, maybe other places obviously too, but there's a program where they collect food and then give food to the kids so that they have food every day when they go to school. Because some kids, they found out, they went to school and they didn't have food. How can you not have food? What does that mean? Who in the heck is not giving some food or money? How can you have kids going to school and not having food? First of all, they become malnourished, but there's shame and all kinds of things to that. You think they're going to grow up as healthy when they're carrying all this shame and so forth? So, somebody came to us and said, when I was new here, they said, could you, Michael, you're the new minister here, the spiritual teacher, can you help us? There's this children's program. And I'm like, well, why didn't they help you? Well, we've presented it several times to the board, and they wouldn't do anything. And I'm like, wow, this is just surreal. Like, how weird am I that I would think we should be doing something? So I had to tactfully go into the board meeting, and hey, I've heard about this program in the area, and, maybe we ought to consider helping to put food, give food to children. And they're like, well, because this is an old style board at the time, but they're, nice people, that's fine. But it was an old style of board. So I just said, what's this that, we're not giving food? Well, the thing is, we really have to discuss it, and we have to think it over, and we should take some time to figure out how we'll do it and if we're going to do it. And it went on, and I just listened the whole time thinking, cuckoo. But I had to patiently listen because I'm new, and I thought if I do too much of a Michael, they're going to, freak out. So I had to wait and listen patiently. And then I'm listening and channeling patience and listening. And then they were done, and then I'll just set patience over here now, and I'm going to channel Michael. So I leaned forward and I said, here's how we're going to do this. Unless, I'm speaking to board members of a church, okay? I leaned forward and I said, unless one of you kills me in my sleep tonight, we're going to get these kids food. That's what I said. And they were just kind of like, this guy's nuts. And I'm like, yeah, I am. So, but I mean it. It's like, how can you live with this lack consciousness? How could you sit and say, we have to think about it for a few more months? And then they said, besides, we have some other programs. What other programs? And if you do have other programs that are on the list of things to discuss, let's do those too. Why is anything waiting? And then, I was going to be impatient because of this sort of thing. And I love it. If that's what it's called, it's great. But to me, it's doing God's will. Be a nowist, Be a nowist. Like, why prolong? Why procrastinate? If you can make a change now, why not? Coining that old phrase, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? Perfect. Brilliant. Another way, another technique another step, another principle or law is prayer and affirmation. You know, we have to learn to think of dollars as we do leaves on a tree. This is a quote from Joel Goldsmith. Like leaves on a tree or oranges, as natural and as an inevitable result of law active within. There is truly no need to be concerned even when the trees appear to be bare, as long as we are conscious of the truth and the law is that even now operating within to bring forth fruit after its own kind. As long as we understand, no fruit on the tree. It's winter. I know it's still coming. If it didn't, there would be something wrong. It's the same with prosperity. God is, I am, we are, and so it is. Understand the law of consciousness and prosperity. Well, but the laws of karma too. No, God gave the law that God is, I am, and we are. Ego gave the law of and you don't deserve. So the ego can say, fine, God is, you are, and you don't deserve. It'll just put some little twist in there that's untrue. And I don't need to fight that. I just need to see it as what it is, which is untrue. It's untrue that I don't deserve. It's untrue that I'm not prosperous, or just because the orange is on the tree right now, that there's no fruit coming. Another law, ask, believe, and receive. The Bible says, all things whatsoever you pray for, ask for, believe, and ye have received, and you will have it. It's not just ask. It's important to believe. Then you will receive. Now, some people have taken that and twisted that too. Okay, fine. Oh, gimme. That's your mantra. Gimme. I'm asking and I'm believing. I'm gonna get. But why are you wanting gimme? Where's love? So God's saying, you know what would really make me happy? Is not that my children would say, give me. I want some more stuff. I mean, that's nice for you all. Because I know you live on an earth and in bodies and you need stuff. Fine. All I'm asking in return is one little thing. When you say give me, before you give me and believe and receive, would you do me a favor? Just close your mind, God says. And I would like you just to think, is there anyone or anything in your life that comes to mind as maybe a wound or a limiting belief? What I would like you to do is give me that. You give me your wounds and limiting beliefs, and in return, I'm going to give you everything. And that sounds like such a twisted arrangement, we don't trust God. Because, I mean, what kind of God's going to go, give me garbage, and I'm going to give you life and flowers? You know, that's kind of weird. But yet God's saying, you don't understand. When you give me your garbage, your hurts, your hates, your limiting beliefs, you're giving me the only thing that keeps you from being me. So I see a great value in that. So get clear about what you're asking for. Ask, but get clear first. Believe, develop faith. What we're asking for is already ours. That's what that believe means. But it also means believe that you're deserving. Calm down, man, on all this stuff, all the thinking. Well, this is a really big miracle that I'm asking for. This one could take longer than another. There's no order of difficulty in miracles. One is not greater and lesser. It just looks like it on earth. So get that out of the way as well. And like Martin Luther King Jr., you may not always get every single thing that you're putting out for, but it's impossible to not get it in some form. It's just that it may not happen now. It's always happening in the great now, but not always in our material eyes. And even though our mind would say, yeah, but I would really like it if it did, it's true, we would be excited. But if we knew what it was going to give us on the other side, nobody would take the little manifestation over the greater manifestation. So be careful with that. Another one is focus. Number 5, focus. Don't be anywhere else when you pray, when you surrender, when you do forgiveness work, when you ask for something new, when you do affirmation. Don't be anywhere else. Emmett Fox says, you can have prosperity no matter what your present circumstances may be. Mankind has dominion over all things when he knows the law of being and obeys it. The law gives you power to attain prosperity. When you're affirming and praying, it's giving you, what you're doing is you're claiming. But first get stuff out of the way and then claim what's yours. You're a hypocrite if you try to claim abundance while still holding resentments or limiting beliefs. When I say you're a hypocrite, I don't mean God's judging you. You're already judged within yourself. You know you're being hypocritical. When you say, I am the presence of God and I deserve love and abundance and a new car now. Part of you knows, seriously, dude. Wasn't it just last night you were telling somebody how much you dislike your boss about this and that? And wasn't it that your sister got the inheritance instead of you? And come on. All right. Seems like a bummer, but what you have is a miraculous potential. Sit down and give up the stuff that's in the way. If you're not receiving, something's in the way. So affirming is good, but you got to make room. And then the sixth one, giving and tithing. This is a really important one, guys. Give. Just do what you can to give, wherever you can, however you can. Give. We don't all understand this. We think, well, now wait. If I have $1 and I give it away, I now don't have $1. I know. This one is the hardest one to describe because I just learned to believe in it. And I know it's the truth and it works. But I can't tell you to do it because if I say go and give your car so you can manifest a new one and then you're walking to work the next day, my conscience can't do that. So I can't just tell you go and do it. I know that these things work, but I wouldn't tell people to do it. It would be like, telling you to follow a specific diet, telling you to, read a particular book. A different book's going to be helpful to some and not another. A diet's going to be helpful to some and not another. And by the same principle, giving. Just generally speaking, though, I will say give however you can. And I've always had a bit of a conscience about this because I stand as a spiritual leader. So for me to stand up front and say, guys, give. Be as generous as you can at the donations on Sunday. Also, though, in between Sundays, practice tithing. It looks too much like I have a vested interest. You see? There was a lady once who came in and said, I'm going to give a donation, and it was tens of thousands of dollars. And she hands me a check. I said, wait, tore it up. I said, let me tell you something first. If you write a check and it's too much, I will get a bonus from that check. So cut it down so that it's smaller amounts over a few months, and then I won't get that bonus. Well, that wasn't very prosperous of me, but it was the right thing to do. Because she wouldn't have known that. You see what I'm saying? Now, if she says, oh, I know that, and I'm okay with it, it's for you too, Michael, great. But I want to be clear and I want to be conscientious. So when I say, guys, practice tithing, trust me on that. It's not with some like scheme behind it. It's not with an agenda behind it. Practice prosperity. We can use it to get by month to month. Yeah, absolutely. This is a form of a business that we have, rent and those things that we have to do, payments on all kinds of things. But it's also helpful for you. If you're only here once and you're hearing this and you go home and we never hear from you again, for you it's helpful. Give however you can. Give to whatever is your spiritual source, but don't stop there. It's first and foremost to what you believe to be serving you, feeding you spiritually. And that can be a spiritual teacher. But let's say you have no spiritual teacher. You never go anyplace. It could be an author that you read and it changed your life. And if you don't have that, find something that represents spirit to you. Because if someone is out there living their life, doing their best to be spiritual, they could use the support because it's not always there for those kinds of people. People doing spiritual work aren't the ones that typically make a great living. Often they're not. They're being of service. If your person was your social worker, if your person was your sponsor, whatever. I'm not saying all those you are allowed to do. Some of them won't accept it. But those kinds of things to me are, for some people, your spiritual food. What served you spiritually? And give it as a gift. Okay? Give. But secondly, besides the spiritual, give just to people as well. However you can, wherever you can. To help animals, to help orphans, charities, however, wherever. stuff you can give away. But also just, it's like, somebody said to me, when it comes to, like, let's say you and I go in a store separately, and you are looking at something, wanting to buy it. And it's something like, oh my God, that's great, I was looking for that. When I hear that you're looking for that too, what I do is inside I determine which of us likes it, wants it the most. I will not take it just because I wanted it. If I feel like someone else is in that store, they were just looking at it and I already even paid for it, I got it first. That's not me. I'm like, yeah, isn't that great? Oh God, yes, I'm going to go up front and pay right now, they might say. And I'm testing, I'm watching and feeling, and I might say, what do you like about it? See, I'm testing it to see. Oh my God, I've always wanted one, and my mother passed away and she had one and it got lost somewhere. You think I can go home with that thing? No, I can't do it. So I'm like, okay. And in some instances I said, I'll walk out of the store and say, let them have it free, I already paid for it. And people think that's nuts. Guys, I'm not saying it's always a $1,000 item. I don't have big savings and all that. But keep giving and you're taken care of. But whatever amount I get on this in this lifetime for the good things I've tried to do in my life, it is a consciousness that far surpasses what I'm going to see in the material dimension. If you understand that, you're doing really well. So give. Just keep giving. Left and right, give. Give your time, give your conscience, even when you think, there's something you want badly. Just understand, if you give, it can't be a loss. I remember one time, even the concept of dating. I had been divorced for a few years and hadn't dated and all that. And, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that. But one day, something happened. One day, I went and listened to this band play some music, and I really liked it. And I met this person. And it was like there was nice camaraderie, like a nice connection. So I think they asked me if I would be willing to dance. So, we danced a little. I thought, this is really cool. There's a chance I would be interested here. Which for me, even my ex would tell you that's really out there. So it's like, I'm really potentially interested. So music's really loud. And one of us said to the other, let's go out front and talk a little bit because we couldn't hear each other. So we went out front. So how are you? What's your name? And I hear from them, well, I'm just starting a divorce and so on. My mind immediately shifts. How can I be helpful? Next thing I know, I was giving advice, support, counseling, feedback. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Done. Now, there's a little part that could go, boy, you really messed that up, dude. Yeah, you had a shot there. But that's not God. So how am I going to answer that little voice that says you could have had? You wanted that lawnmower, you wanted that date, you wanted that soda, whatever, and somebody else got it. It doesn't matter. The greater good should really be the compass for most of us. And it sounds contrary to prosperity, which means get what you can. Look at me, I have more than you. The prosperous people in the world a lot of times are like that. They're very consumptuous. But you don't hear about the ones that are very giving. It's not as popular. It's not as well known, partly because they're not boasting it. Because the consciousness of their abundance is also a humble consciousness. I would rather be a prosperous person and humble than a prosperous person who had to take from people. Trust in the law of love, making you abundant. We actually think there's a contrary bit here. There's a contrast between God, love, etc., and prosperity. But that's just stuff you heard when you were a nun lifetimes ago. That's not reality. That's just old programs. Let it go. Nuns can have some. All right? So the last, which is not the least, is gratitude. Practice an attitude of gratitude. An attitude of gratitude. Give thanks even before you see things manifest. An attitude of gratitude. An eagle? Nice. Pretty cool, huh? Oh, there he is, yeah. May not see it on film, but a big eagle outside the window here. So, and things like that, synchronicities. Those are, gratitude is not just what you get. Gratitude is you're in the zone. And then all of a sudden the eagle shows up. You're in the zone. You're in the zone when you let the counselor take precedence over the date. With some of you are going to go, I didn't like that one thing you shared, Michael, because it's been years for me. Don't tell me I should. Do what you want to do. I'm only telling you, follow the greater good, and guess what? You become part of the greater good, and the greater good is God. So you become part of God. So you missed a date and you become part of God. Pretty cool. It's worth it. You hook up with them, you're going to regret it anyway and wish you're going to start talking to God about taking them away. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, they can go well. Just nobody in this room. No, I'm kidding. It's a line from As Good as It Gets, the movie, you know. Some people have picnics and happy times, just nobody in this car, he says. Anyway, so coming to a close. In my life, as a spiritual teacher, what was popular in the 80s, study groups, remember that? Some of you are old enough if you remember, we had a lot of people were doing study groups. And there were some New Thought kinds of churches here and there. So that's what I did, and it worked really well. But then things changed. The 90s came about. Now it was New Thought churches, but bookstores happened a lot in the 90s. So you had to shift gears and be able to travel and teach in bookstores and so on. Some guys started writing books by that time, and so on. And I did that and succeeded. Then the 90s came, and the 90s shifted because, things were really blowing open. Now conferences were becoming very popular. So I did conferences and so on and tours. But then that changed. And the bookstores faded away, if you hadn't noticed. A lot of the New Thought bookstores. In Seattle area, there were almost 50 at one time in the 90s. So speaking at bookstores worked. And they're gone in the 2000s. So if you don't adapt, you're gone, like in any kind of business. But as a spiritual teacher, the 2000s, things changed again. A lot of things collapsed and the stores and conferences disappeared. And, and I was kind of bummed because I really like conferences. But, a handful of us were able to survive that shift as well. And then, for me, it shifted into full-on 40 weeks a year touring. And sometimes even more than that. But the 2000s became tour even more now. Tour. The bookstores disappeared, so you had to tour even more. There weren't local stores and so on. You have to adapt to that sort of things, Then in the 2010s, I was fortunate enough to shift again. And it was primarily coming and having a home base and also doing the social media, the internet kind of forms of teaching. In any one of those eras, there were some people were succeeding and then they wouldn't be able to carry over to the next. Also, students of mine that were in the 80s, a lot of times weren't in the 90s or the 2000s, they shifted. And it's not my teaching shifts per se. I'm just keep going to God, man. I just keep going to God. And how I present that in the 80s is going to be different from the 2000s and so on. But if you're doing any kind of work, whatever it is, you better know how to adapt. Or that may be one of the reasons why you're not seeing the abundance and prosperity. You adapt. Now for me, I don't adapt for adaption's sake. I don't just go, I better shift so I can keep being successful. This is guidance. If you want to be prosperous, you need to love what you're doing, but you have to also be good at it. Some of us love what we're doing, we're not very good at it, you may not succeed. Some of us are good at it, but we don't love it, and you may not succeed. You got to love it, you got to be good at it, and there's one more thing. It has to be something everybody wants. Okay? You have those three things intact, and you're likely going to be prosperous at it. It's likely going to represent your soul's purpose. You got to love it, got to be good at it, but bring it. Those three things, just like Buddhism, A Course in Miracles, and 12-step programs. Connect with God, change you, and bring the change to others. So you got to love it like God. You've got to be good at it, self, and you've got to know how to bring it to others. Bring the change, be the change you'd like to see in the world. Bring the change to others. Represent the healthier version of that, whatever that is. And this is, just ever so important. But keep it in mind. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to say healing, the healing part of the 7 things I shared, 7 laws. One of them is healing, and that means goodbye. And so in my own life, I've already shared this once, and probably for the last time I'll share again. In my own life, what I did, it's fall. And in about a year, I'm going to celebrate with you all. We're going to celebrate something. We're going to celebrate, it'll be like Unity's, I think it's going to be near 70 years here. This building, this whatever. And And then we're going to be celebrating. I'll be 60. And then also I will have been here for 10 years. So I want us to kind of celebrate these various things. However, this is the fall time. And it's a good time to say goodbye to things that aren't serving you guys. Yeah, no kidding. It's a good time. It's fall. The leaves are going to fall. You know, unclaimed fruit's going to fall. It's time. So what I did was I made myself a list of things. Because any one of your wishes, your dreams, your expectations, your hopes, any of those that are still on the tree and you're sitting around waiting for them to produce fruit. I mean, you can go, okay, well, that fig didn't quite mature, but it's still on the tree, so I'm going to wait. And now it's like midwinter, the thing has icicles coming off of it, and it's like a raisin, and you're like waiting for a fig. It's gone. It's about to fall, and you're like, with your glue gun, to glue it back on the tree, all it needs is some duct tape. You don't try to duct tape your life back together, man. It's dead. It's gone. But prosperity says miracles. Yeah, well, no. No, it's gone. The fig is gone. The tree, whatever. It's gone. Don't keep trying to resuscitate it. You have a corpse of a dream, and you're like, trying to resuscitate it. A relationship that's, rigor mortis sets in, man. We're like, stop trying to resuscitate it. Why are you the only one that still thinks there's life left in it? You look kooky to some people. Especially spirit. They're like, what are they doing? I don't know. This is just, humans have this tendency. It's gone. So I'm saying, take an inventory of your life. Whatever is not producing its fall, make a list of things now in the fall, or at the very latest, the end of the year, to say goodbye to. Make your list. And do like a burning bowl ceremony. Today, next month, whenever. A burning bowl type of ceremony. And say goodbye. Now, I'm saying this, but humans get scared hearing that. But I'm saying to you, it takes courage. But you're actually part of the living dead when you're waiting for these things to be alive when they're not. I'm saying trust God enough to know that if you give these things up, any of them that have value will recycle and come back in a healthy form. Take the fruit, take the seed, plant it, and get a new tree. Don't wait for the one piece of fruit that didn't produce, that's dead, to come back to life. I took my time. I did my list. I put dreams, and even some that were lifelong dreams, because I did an inventory. It wasn't just like, here's a few things that aren't for this year. I went, wait, what about lifelong dreams? I just was like, hey, we're just going for it. Some lifelong dreams, some relationship things. I put it out there, and some people aren't wanting to connect or heal, or put them on the list, whatever they happen to be. Dreams, promises, debts. Understand that every one of your wishes, dreams, etc., that have not been fulfilled, listen, they're debts. They're deficits. They're debts. And they're draining you. They are. They become a leak. And it's taking energy from you. But the ego is going to say, but maybe tomorrow, almost there. And it keeps you hooked like a really bad investment. Okay? Dinar. So, what? What? That was an inside joke for folks watching from further afar. But, there's investments that some people have made, and I hear the heartbreak behind it, because dreams are there. Well, guys, what is part of your consciousness cannot be taken from you. So if these things are ailing you and they're leaking you, that means that you're allowing a leaking consciousness, a deficit consciousness, a debt-oriented consciousness. Clean it out as best you can. I can't say it's easy, because there's a part of me, at the end here, there's a part of me that sat and thought, this is kind of weird. I just said goodbye to everything. I have my list, all but like a few things, which I'm going to do in a couple more months. But I said goodbye. Like, I have my list. Certain friendships, or certain this, and investments, or whatever it is. It's like, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And I did a full process. And at the end, it wasn't easy, to realize it's like imagine you sitting down and saying, and now I have nothing in terms of dreams and hopes. One of them was, I would like to have us manifested a one large new venue so we could all have one giant service. And it's not easy to find in this town, on and on and on with that story. But, so what we did was we said, that's it. And I scratched from the list, and then comes the idea, we're going to do it anyway. We're just going to find a way to put in more chairs and pack in more people. We're going to have a single service. That's part of saying goodbye to something that was waiting for years to manifest. You follow? So sometimes it's not going to take the form you would hope, like a bigger building somewhere, but it is what it is. There are people that have said to me, oh, when I sell my house, I can't wait, I'm going to tithe, or I'm going to give you a donation when I get my inheritance. That's when they disappear. So I say, I put them on the paper and goodbye. Instead of someday, if they come through, say goodbye. Guys, if it's yours, it's coming to you from a healthier source. You don't want it coming from somebody that would be lying and withholding anyway. Healthy only. So the moral of the story today greatly is healthy only. When I went through the shifts from the 80s to the 90s and so on, I can tell you one thing. The shifts kept happening from one era to another as a teacher. But one thing I put out there is healthy. I want integrity. So when they said, let's shift to the new era, the last era, and social media, I said, no. Many times people have said, let me give you a donation, a big donation to buy a big property. Many times. And more often I have said no than yes if there were agendas. And it's the same. And it sounds non-prosperous because true prosperity has to have an integrity to it. Do you have the wherewithal, the commitment to God that you could say no to stuff, including romance, when the greater good is in your mind? Focus. Got to have focus on the real stuff here. So for me, an integrity. And I told them, we're not doing social media broadcasts until I know that it can be done with a certain integrity. And quality, but in integrity. And that's what we chose. So my version of prosperity includes an integrity that may not be yours may not be mine, but find your essence behind it. Don't just go looking for stuff. Find stuff after you find the goal, the alignment you're looking for. And I only choose stuff that's in alignment with that. Dead stuff doesn't fit it. So goodbye. And if you don't say goodbye, trust me, there's a little hose that's running from those things that you're not even thinking you think about. But you are thinking about them unconsciously. And they are draining you. Snip them all, shut them all down, the valves, so that you can start filling up with new inspirations. And even though I made my list of a dozen, 2 dozen things, checked them off, almost all of them, I immediately started receiving a better feeling inside, freer, but I also felt inspirations, a couple inspirations like this one. And I love the vibe in the room already, but new inspirations, but lots of goodbyes. And those aren't easy. And if those are going to control you, then you better ask yourself why you're letting that be more important than your goal in God. All right, let's take a few centering breaths. Set aside the stuff of the world. Just shake that stuff off. A little stretching of your neck and back just to get all the kinks of stuff of life out. Let's let that stuff pass away. Today's meditation is a decree, a prayer, a powerful one, but it's related to our material life. It will affirm the goodbye of several things and the welcoming in of something new. But it involves opening our centers, spiritual centers, then cleansing them, and then resealing them with what we've replaced, with all that presence of God. We begin by opening our seals, allowing you, Father, Mother, God, to enter our space here now and guide this journey. We are open to receiving the Divine Mother's presence and allowing her to bring out that which is unhealthy for us. It does not serve a purpose. Thoughts, words, deeds, beliefs, karmas. and cleansing us, and then refilling us with light only. So in the name of our Father, Mother God, the Holy Christ that I am, and the Holy Spirit, I affirm the presence of complete holiness in and around me, thus making sacred my spirit, mind, and body. I affirm the guidance and assistance of my elder brother, Jesus, my spiritual sister, Mary Magdalene, my protector, Archangel Michael, and my beloved mother, Mary, and all ascended masters of light. My Father, Mother God, whose presence is heaven and is within all life, sacred and holy is your name. The I am within me. Your kingdom come and your will be done, manifested here and now through each righteous choice that I make, just as it is in heaven. Bring to me this and every day all that you will to draw me closer to my remembrance of the divine Christ within me, and teach me to be as forgiving as you. I joyously choose your holy voice as my guide through moments of both inspiration and challenge, thus receiving all the gifts you intend for me. I gratefully affirm that my will is no longer apart from your divine will. Instead, your will, Father, Mother God, is my will. My will is your will. Therefore, I choose to rise above my ego so you can deliver me from all illusionary forces that seem to manipulate me in mind, body, or soul. I vow to be more of God's kingdom and to extend this kingdom each and every day. I joyously surrender all ego manifestations of separation and lack, and instead allow my physical and material life to reflect more and more of God. At the end of each of the following decrees, we'll close with I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. I joyously surrender the ego manifestations that say that as God's child, or as God's children for that matter, we must remain financially poor or limited. In God there is no lack or poverty. I am made in God's image, and therefore I experience no lack or poverty. God's will is for my financial abundance and freedom. I will be the will of God made manifest on earth, therefore I will be prosperous. I demand the manifestation of God's will of prosperity and abundance for me and for all of God's children. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. I joyously surrender the ego manifestations of planetary forces that control this economy. I call forth the manifestation of God's will in which all people are free to live in an abundant life. My Christ self exposes and consumes the ego manifestations of lack and limitation. I am free of this illusion, and I know that lack is a product of the ego and the ego's sense of separation. I accept that with God all things are possible. Through my I am presence, I transcend all limitations. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. I joyously surrender the ego manifestations of lack and limitation. Such beliefs and their manifestations are against the will of God. When I seem to experience limitations, my soul has fallen into a state of separation from my I am presence. I actively accept God's abundant life, which is already mine. It is God's will that I have an abundant life, and thus I do not have to earn it. I now accept what God gives me freely. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. I joyously surrender the ego manifestations of financial lack that led me to believe that to have anything, I have to take it by force or through manipulation. When I take things by force, instead of receiving them freely from God, I lose sight of the expansive aspect, mother aspect of the universe. This thought is contradictive and generates a force that seeks to take away from me what I seek to possess. In giving away the things of this world, I receive more of God, and thereby more abundance is brought into the material world for everyone. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. I joyously surrender the ego manifestations of having to work until I'm exhausted to make any progress and prosperity in life. I do not have to earn by living by the sweat of the brow. It is my Father's good pleasure to give me the kingdom, and I set myself free through non-attachment to things of this world. God is my refuge and security. I live in God. In God I find my refuge, strength, and fulfillment of all my needs. In God I find everlasting peace, as well as my true identity. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. And lastly, I joyously invoke the sincere and humble consciousness of God's servant, Magdalene, who demonstrated the ultimate receptivity of the soul when you devoted your life and love to Christ, your teacher, Jesus. Beloved sister, teach me to recognize the Christ in my brothers and sisters and to demonstrate my willingness to serve them. Awaken me to the power that comes from setting my ego aside and learning to understand that the last shall be the first and the first shall be last. Teach me what it meant when the Master said to us all, "There is no one to condemn thee, and neither do I condemn thee. Now rise and sin no more. Rise into prosperity and abundance. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. And now in the name of my Holy Father, Mother God, the Holy Son, Christ that I am, my true identity, and the Holy Spirit, I accept that I am one with my I am presence, and that through that oneness I am sealed from all ego illusions and the appearances that they project under the screen of life. Today I am one with God and with my brothers and sisters and my true self. I affirm that Archangel Michael and his legions consume the planetary forces of anti-Christ consciousness. My Christ self exposes and consumes all power previously given to my ego and all its manifest forms. Having surrendered all the illusions, the prince of this world comes and finds nothing in me. The ego comes and finds no resonance here. Nothing to push, no buttons, no strings. My physical life and all its manifestations are the Lord's and the fullness thereof. 3 times. My physical life and all its manifestations are the Lord's and the fullness thereof. My physical life and all its manifestations are the Lord's and the fullness thereof. My physical life and all its manifestations are the Lord's and the fullness thereof. God is raising the earth to a glorious new day. Today I choose to live and be the will of my Father, Mother God. Today I choose the life of Christ consciousness. The kingdom of God is manifest in me and on earth now and forever. And so it is. Gradually stretch out when you're ready. Breathe that in as a permanent shift. It works in our centers, in our consciousness, specifically also the root chakra that has to do with the material world, our physical selves. Healing, goodbye to the old, healing. The eagle is a part of yourselves. So when you see it, you go, an eagle came in to verify. This is what I'm looking for. What? The building, the room, the Michael? No. We're just symbols. The thing inside the room, God, the way of God, that's what I'm determined to experience. First of all, it's who I am. We started off by saying, the center of the room is like God, and the light emanating, filling the room is Christ, and that's who I am. So I'm already in the room. I just want to be part of things that help me remember that. When I don't, I'm living in the darkness. And if I only fall and worship the door, I'm just kind of following superstition. Goodbye, man. Goodbye. Enough of that. I want to know what's on the other side and be what's on the other side. So thank you for your time and patience, guys. Really, really nice to experience this.